Well, the Cowboys off-season program continues, and so does the Locked On Cowboys Squad Show. Here we go. Welcome to our Monday edition, our Monday night edition of the show. It's literally a show that does not need an introduction, and so we're not going to play one. But joining me, as always, the co-host of the daily Locked On Cowboys podcast, Landon McCool, and, of course, my co-host on the in-season Cowboys postcasts, the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. All right, today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned later on for the Armada Player of the Week. That will be later on in the show. But coming up over the next hour, the very latest on the Cowboys draft. We are now just about 72 hours away, a little more than that, from Green Bay. Landon, we were talking before, Coach. We've been going back and forth. We're finally here. We're going to get into that, the absolute very latest with the draft. One little note here before we jump in, guys. We have a tiny little bit of breaking news, not really surprising news, but breaking news. Just wanted to get your thoughts to get it out there. The Cowboys have exercised the fifth-year option on offensive lineman guard Tyler Smith's rookie contract, a little over $21 million when that will come to fruition. No surprise, right? No brainer.
No, yeah, absolutely no surprise.
Yeah, no, not a surprise there. I mean, they're gonna deal with that, move it out of the way so they can get to the elephant in the room, which is which they got to get to Micah.
Yeah, there you go. One down, one to go. All right. Well, with a lot of clicks to be had here, the rumor mill, guys, is cranking back up, and I'm going to have one for you a little bit later on. But let's kick things off with the very latest now with the draft. Landon, I'm going to start with you. I know you already had a full episode today earlier with your partner, Marcus Mosher, who's going to join us on Thursdays. We get you ready the day of the draft. But what's the very latest today on Monday, just a few days away?
Well, it's week, right? I mean, everyone's kind of putting their chum into the water right now. So it's always an interesting time to humors, because you get a weird combination, just absolute nonsense, and then just like randomly a kernel of truth. Remember, it was about this time in 2018, I think it was. We started hearing Leighton Vander Esch's name kind of being floated just like suddenly out of nowhere, after not out of nowhere, but as out of nowhere as a Cowboys pick in the first round, suddenly being floated the week of the draft. So there's lots of smoke in there. There's lots of, kind of people trying to misdirect media and other teams and that sort of thing. But every once in a while, you're going to hear something that sounds a little crazy, but it may be so crazy that it's true.
Coach, how about on your end?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to some people inside over there. They tell me somewhere around 15 true first-round picks. Does that concern you? Not really. I mean, because if you go look at that board, I'll bet you they don't have one quarterback up there. And it's the beauty in the eyes of the beholder. When you start thinking about how this is put together, I think in the next 3 days you're gonna hear a lot of different, what's going to be scuttlebutt. I think there will be people that are picking up the phone. They're picking up the phone now. I mean, John Schneider was out there today saying that there's already people picking up the phone, wanting their backup quarterback. I mean, questioning, hey, how do you feel about so-and-so? I mean, all of that is going to be happening in these next few days. And so there's going to be, I think, a lot going on. You got to think about, what is Aaron Rodgers going to do? I mean, is he really going to leave the Steelers at the altar? And if he does, I mean, does that become a team that becomes, active and wanting to move up? And then, you're trying to, it's like, you always hear me say, I mean, or kind of, put it in horse racing terms, because other than football, that's about all I understand. But I mean, it's about jockeys that are trying to get their horse in the position to see if they can win the race. And we're probably at the half-mile pole. In the next 3 days, they're going to stagger this thing to the finish line. So we'll see We'll see where all of it goes. I don't think anybody really knows at the end of the day what the Cowboys are going to do. And I don't think at the end of the day they're letting a whole lot out of there. So, it makes for good opportunity to get on these shows and give an opportunity, give your opinion and see where it goes.
Or in Landon and Marcus's case, every day, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It does feel like you're hearing less coming out of the Frisco Star than you were hearing from the old Valley Ranch Star, and certainly when they first got to Frisco. So I don't know if they've tightened their lips over there, or if they're just throwing chum all over the place, and you're just kind of hearing mixed messages from everyone. But I'm sure whoever you're talking to is probably giving you good stuff, because that's interesting too. I want to talk about that stretch, because 15 first rounders, that seems like a little bit more than I expected. I mean, that's still lower than what I feel like they're getting annually. It's a lighter first round class, but that still seems like more than I expected. Does that seem right to you?
Again, if you take, let's just play the game. If you take the Cowboys out of it and you say, okay, you're taking Shedeur and Jackson's Dart and Cam Ward, you're going to push them out of it. Now, true first-round grades, I'd like to know how many running backs they have in that group. I mean, is it one? Is it four? Because as I look at it, I mean, you look at the running backs in particular, and I believe that Hampton is every bit as good as Genty. And so 1A, 1B, and then you look at Henderson and Judkins. Is there any difference in them? They're 5'10", 202, 6 foot, 221. Both of them jump 38.5 vertical. Strength coach is the same damn guy. So, I think you got, are those guys in that first round look, or is it just, what we hear? Is it just the Raiders that are kind of eyeing the running back? I just think there's a lot going on here, and 14 sounds about right if you realistically look at it. And we talked about this the last show too. I mean, if you're sitting there and all those guys are gone and you're up in the first round, you're going to have to make a first round pick. Then, you got a first round grade on him or not. I mean, you're going to have to pick the highest guy. And so I think that's the whole key is, how do you have them lined up, and do you feel confident with the discernment and how you put them up there?
I'm interested to see also just like how many offensive linemen they potentially would have, and like how do they view some of these guys who are like real specific for scheme, like Tyler Booker. He's a guy I really like out of Alabama, big, strong, long arms, but he's probably not for a team that's going to be majoring in outside zone, right? Because he's not quite that kind of foot athlete. But if you're going to run a lot of gap, a lot of power, this is a guy who can fold a defensive tackle back. He can move enough to get, to pull around and come in, be a blocker that way. So I'm interested to see how they see guys like that, and like, Collins and Simmons, who I feel like, they all have kind of very specific warts, but you may like them enough to give them first round grades if you're willing to kind of overlook some of the things that other teams may not be.
And then you start looking at, who is the offensive line coach?
Yeah.
Does he have some sort of connection with the offensive line coach at Alabama? You see what I'm saying? Is he getting some better information? Is he, you say inside, outside zone. I mean, I'm more inclined to say, can he lead and follow if he's two-step dancing with a fat girl? Because you got to be able to move his right foot as well as he's got to move his left foot. So, it's just, to me, it's how you evaluate those guys. And then it's really about when you have relationships with people. I mean, I know you guys have heard me say, I went and spent time with Randy Moss because Jerry really wanted Randy Moss, and I had a relationship with Jim Donnan, who had been the coach at Marshall, and I went up there and spent a week there, and I'm trying to find out everything I can find out, and so those are the kind of things that we don't really know, and you hear about guys obviously having relationships in the business. And then, maybe you get that little tidbit about, that player that really gets you excited or makes you think, man, I'm not really sure I want to put my stamp of approval on this guy. And so it really is. It has to become a situation where everybody in the room believes in who that is. We'll go back when Rod Marinelli was the defensive line coach here, and he wanted Hill out of, I think it was Central Florida, and everybody thought he was just an average guy, but he liked him, and that's who he wanted, and he felt like he saw something in him, and the rest is history. But that's how it works if you're realistic with how you look at this, because it is so close to how guys see guys, and then how guys truly evaluate them and put their name behind that.
It's really interesting this year, in that category of what you're talking about, because the offensive line coach is now coming straight from college coach, right? So he has some insight maybe on some of his own guys, maybe on some guys that he recruited that ended up at other schools, or just coaching against other defensive players. So
wasn't he 1 year at Arizona with the Cardinals?
Oh, you're talking about Clayton Adams, the offensive coordinator. I was talking about Connor Riley, the K-State offensive coordinator.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah, just to your point though, right? Like obviously he comes maybe with a little bit different scheme, but also the relationships that he has with veterans that are on the street, right? And scouting guys. So it's now that we've got like kind of a newer coaching staff. And even the wide receiver coach, right, also coming from college, he's going to have some insight on these kids coming in from the draft, and obviously, again, guys he recruited that ended up at other spots, right? So I do think you're right that obviously relationships make a huge difference here, and likes and dislikes of the coaches, and this year maybe even more so because you're getting some of these coaches who have direct experience with some of these college players.
And I think from our standpoint, that's what makes this a different animal to try to guess who we think they're going to pick, because it's all different. Again, it's a different defensive coordinator. It's a different, we don't have the information on how is DeMarvion Overshown does Britt Brown, who handles a lot of the on-field stuff. He's in that draft room. Hey, Britt, how are we with DeMarvion?
What's our timeline? Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Britt, where are we with Diggs? Where are we? Because guess what? We're not going to get that information. Well, we think he's going to be ready in training camp. Well, we're not sure about this. Then all of a sudden, now you're going to look. Let's just say that one of them is a little lacking in where he should be. Now all of a sudden that becomes a position that you have to address. And you may not see it initially on night one, but I mean, everybody that I'm talking to in the National Football League will tell you late 2, 3, and 4 it's as good a draft as maybe they've ever seen in those mid rounds. And then I had a guy that, hey, I wanted to place a bet to say, hey, we'll see more guys in the second or third round that have long impact in the National Football League than we do this year in the first round. And so, when you think about that and somebody says that, normally those guys don't say that unless they really have a strong sense. And so I could see, when you hear about that, you start adhering to what's being said. And so we focus a lot on this 12 pick, but guess what? That 40, whatever that 40 and whatever that 70 number pick is, it's going to be every bit as important as this guy that they pick at number 12.
Got to nail those day 2 picks. Got to nail them. Absolutely.
A great title. I like that. Speaking of relationships, guys, want to remind everybody that they can be a part of the show. We are live right now. If you're watching it later, we won't be live, but if you're watching it now, we are live, and you can get in via the comments. Ron has jumped in. Coach Ron agrees with you. He said that Jerry messed up by not taking Randy Moss.
Oh, yeah. I think we all agree about that now, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We're going to take our first time out. When we come back, though, there's so many. I mean, I think I'd love to see like the number of mock drafts that are out there right now, or that are all done by the time everything gets finished.
Watch what you asked for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Right. Brain will melt.
So I'm gonna, I know Landon and Marcus, you've been doing it, and Coach, you've been doing it on the radio. I'm just gonna throw what somebody said was the perfect Cowboys trifecta, and I want to see what you guys think of that. We'll see. We'll get into it when we come back. But it's a great start to this show. We are counting down to Green Bay on Thursday. This is the Cowboys Squad Show. All right, let me adjust here on the fly. Nope, not that one, not that one, not that one, not that one, not that one. I'm trying to add the studio. Let me see. Nope, that's not it. Sorry, guys. There we go. There we go. That's what I wanted to add. I lost the studio part, but that's okay. That's all right. We're good. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Plus Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed, and easily you can do so as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Now, here's a cool thing. You get endless entertainment as well. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Hosts with no gaming interest or experience can talk about how FTV provides them with other great endorsement entertainment choices, which I just said. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Okay, there we go. Welcome back to the Cowboys Squad Show. Jeff Biggs, Landon McCool, and the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. All right, guys, we've said multiple times that the Cowboys really need 3 starters, at least from the first 3 rounds, if not more, right? Well, here's one. This is according to John Machada with The Athletic. His perfect Cowboys trifecta has Dallas selecting Teteroa McMillan in the first round at number 12. Ole Miss corner Trey Amos in round number 2 with the second round pick. And then in the third round, the Cowboys grabbed their running back in Vols star Dylan Sampson. That's just one.
Yeah, I've heard. Why don't we draft Matthew Golden, Makuba, and then top it off with Collins, hit the trifecta with Longhorns, or if Collins not there, take Jihadi Brown. I mean, everybody I think has a good feel for what they think the trifecta would be. That's kind of the next. And that's the next draft, isn't it? And they just started the race meet over at Lone Star Park. I'd like to hit one trifecta.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good trio. Like, I think it's about finding value at each one of those picks and making sure that you're getting the things you need from your shopping list, just with good value. I mean, I tend to think, like, for me, I probably and I don't know if they're going to end up doing this or not. And I think it really depends on which running back is at 44. But if like one of those 2 Ohio State running backs fell to me at 44, I'd run up to the podium to grab one of them because I really like either one of them. And then, whether it's a defensive tackle or another corner that, hopefully falls to you in the third, maybe waiting a little while to get that spot. But I mean, I'm on board with a lot of these because I think, as you know, you can shuffle it a couple of different ways, and as long as you're getting good value at the pick, I think you can hit all your needs in those first 3 rounds.
You know, I mean, my gut feeling is I think this team right now, I like both running backs they have. Doesn't mean they don't need a running back, but I mean, I'd go into the season with Williams and Sanders and feel pretty good. So I think it's where, again, who is that guy that you value that slides to you? Who is that? And you know, we talk about McMillan. I mean, I like McMillan and I like Golden, but I believe Golden has a little more upside. Now you're going to say, well, the Cowboys need a 2 receiver. Yeah, they need a 2 receiver, but as I look at them, I want the guy that I feel like has a little more upside, and I think Golden has a little more upside. That's not taking anything away from McMillan because he's 6'4", and we know he can run. Again, when I look at guys, I'm trying to also look at a couple years down the road, 3 years down the road, how do I think this is not college football where they're going in the portal. I mean, how do these guys develop and continue to develop? And I think the one thing that I learned, and this is the other thing that I think is very important when you're looking at players, and I learned this from a guy named Mike Giddings, and he was with the 49ers for a long time, and he graded, you could buy his service. He graded every player in the preseason. And everybody has different grading systems and different grades they put on guys, but he would always put a flat after the grade. He gave you a flat line, he gave you a descending, or he gave you an ascending. And I think it's very important when you talk about these guys, give me the guy that you think is going to be better 2 years from now. That's the guy. And again, we're guessing, right? But give me that guy. Don't give me the guy who's high end right now and you think that's just where he's going to be, and nothing wrong with that. But that's how he's going to be playing 2 years from now. I want somebody that's got that arrow going up. Keep the arrow going up.
I think that's something that is often missing from the Golden McMillan conversation. I think you're right. We're not here to tell you who had a better college career. We're here to try to project which player is going to be a better NFL player, and I think that's, a lot of folks I hear that are, against Golden have talked about, oh, well, he didn't produce at the level that a lot of first round wide receivers did. Why did it take him so long to get into the swing of the offense? And there's circumstance here. First of all, players are young and they're developing, and all these guys are somewhere between 20 and 24 years old. Well, some of them are 25 with these 7-year players, but yeah, I mean, they're all still very young and they're on different, parts of the spectrum of their development. And I think with Golden, to me, I see a guy who gets to Texas. There's already a number 1 wide receiver in the mix there. It takes him a little while to get into the offense, but when it was really important, when it was in the playoffs, when it was the end of the season, that's when this guy shined. That's when this guy took over that offense and became the number 1 wide receiver. So, I'm not going to knock him necessarily because of, the timing of things. And look, the way college football is too, with all the transferring that happens, it could really kind of change the timelines of the development of some of these guys. So, when you look at the college careers, did Tate McMillan have a much more impactful statistical impact for Arizona? Absolutely. He was a 4-year starter. He was a 5-star recruit. He was, I think, the number 1 receiver out of the state of California, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he was a big time deal. It took Golden a little bit longer, but I think what you see in Golden is a guy that is really starting to ascend as he leaves college football.
Yeah, give me a guy playing against Pac-10 corners. Give me a guy playing against SEC corners.
Yeah.
That too. And I confess, I saw a little bit more of Golden than I did of McMillan, but man, and as you noted, Landon, especially in the stretch run. I mean, he just had a great knack of getting open. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And I always say the great ones make that look easy, but it's not. Not everybody can do it.
Well, he's also getting knocked, this is one of the weirdest things I've seen in a while. He's also getting knocked because he ran a 4.28, and people don't seem to see that speed translate on tape. And it's like, I don't care. Pretend he ran a 4.3. He's still that fast. He's still separating. He's still, getting down the field and threatening a defense vertically and causing the defense to stretch. So, I feel like sometimes, we pit nicks here a little bit with some of these guys. And I think Coach is right. Like, a lot of this is going to be about preference and about what you're looking for. Yeah. I think Tetro McMillan is a guy that, if you're just looking at players universally, I think he's probably got more universal appeal because he could come in and be a wide receiver 1 for some teams if you play a certain type of offense. But I think for the Cowboys specifically, I think Golden, with the fit and the way that he would kind of play opposite of CeeDee Lamb, I think that makes up the difference for maybe what you feel like is a more universal appeal with Tetro McMillan versus Golden. I think, it's really a lot easier to see that fit of Golden playing opposite of CD. And I think that can, make up the difference maybe in like universal grades or consensus board grades.
Yeah, and in 3 years, when CD's next contract is up, who's ready to step up and be the one? Is this the guy? And he should be. You pick him at 12, you're sitting there at 12. He should be that guy. And you better be ready to put your stamp on that. I'm like you. I mean, 4.28, 4.29, what do you ran? A 1.49, 10-yard split? I mean,
that's right.
How fast you need to be? I mean, to me, yeah. And when nobody ever catches you, I mean, I've seen enough, but good for him for stepping up and running that. He did show you he could run that. There's a lot of guys that didn't want to run. I mean, Genty wouldn't run. Well, why not? What he hiding something, or you don't feel like you're the turf's right, or you don't want to run that blue turf in Boise, and whatever the scenario is. But you know what? I give a guy a tick up too that'll step up in front of everybody and go post it.
I like that. Well, but before we get to our last break, I'm going to use the lock word. I don't like to use that a lot, but you guys both of you feel pretty much that it's a lock that they will take a receiver at number 12?
I don't know that I would say lock. I would say that it's probably the strong betting preference. I think that it makes a lot of sense where the talent is, what the Cowboys need, how the caliber of player that they need to move the needle at the position that they're looking at, right? Like I have concerns that, if you wanted to get a wide receiver in the second round, man, you got to really thread the needle and make sure you get the right guy or hope that the right guy kind of falls to you. I think if you pick him at 12, you're going to have some good options and maybe even multiple to kind of do that. So I think it's likely, but man, I mean, if Armand Membu falls to you, or if depending on who you like in this draft, right? Like if someone was to fall, I mean, that was one thing that we talked about today on the podcast is, folks are kind of, gnashing their teeth a little bit, the fact that Tetro McMillan may not make it to the Cowboys. And the point that Marcus and I were making this morning is that if that happens, that means one of these other guys that we've been expecting to go above us is going to fall to you at 12, right? So don't look a gift horse in the mouth if that's the case, right? You take the good player and then you see what happens at 44. So I would say that they're angling for a wide receiver first, just because it kind of makes some sense. But I think someone in the comments just said a trade back is not a terrible scenario, right? Like to go and, I mean, as Stretch said, like so this class going into the fourth round has some of the, the deepest talent that we've seen in a draft in a long time. You can still get guys who can give you significant snaps going into the fourth round. Cowboys don't have a fourth round pick this year. Yeah. So I would not at all be shocked. In fact, I would be surprised if the Cowboys ended the second day of the draft without a new fourth round pick in the third day of the draft, whether it be through trade or whatever. I just feel like they're going to want to either maybe trade back in the second round or something and try to recoup that fourth round pick, just because you're going to want another bite in the apple.
Yeah, instead of asking the question, who's the lock at 12 they're going to pick, the question is, are you locked in at 12? Is it a lock they pick at 12? Because if that's the case, then I think it's, you have a better shot of answering that. But again, my question is, do they stay at 12? And then what does it's expensive to move up into that top 15. It really is. Now, that's why we started the show talking about how many first rounders that you really think there are. Because in my mind, if you look at this across the league, we talk about the Cowboys, and it's the Cowboys, but how many first round quarterbacks do the Saints have on the board? To me, it maybe 3. How many first round quarterbacks do the Raiders have on the board? That's the other thing. So instead of saying, hey, what's a lock you think the Cowboys pick, is a lock that they pick at number 12.
Yeah. All right. Well, a lot of people jumping in, as you said, via the comment crew, and we welcome your comments and your input. We've got another half hour to go. That was Jay Kelly, who said the Cowboys are going to trade back. Ron has jumped in with some more comments as well. But either way, like you said, day 2 and just the first 3 picks are going to be huge. I mean, and especially with the depth of this draft. I was curious, Landon, because you've been doing it every day, and Coach, you've been on top of it as well. Is it just me, or does it seem like we don't hear much about player visits or player meetings anymore like we used to, or maybe that's not the case, but it just seems like in the NBA and some other sports, it's a little more out there in the open, whereas it seems in the NFL, things are a lot more under wraps.
I mean, you get the 30 visits.
Right.
They're kind of trickled out by the beat writers. I just think that people are becoming more savvy about what those mean now. It used to be that the Cowboys went, I don't know, something like 15 straight years or something like that, picking a player that was on their 30 visit list. But I think people have started to realize, and I think the big thing is just correcting the language, right? Because I hear a lot of people call it top 30 visits, and it's not the top 30 visits. It's not like your top 30 players that you're inviting. It's you only get 30 of them, and they get used in a variety of ways. Sometimes you want to get to know the player a little bit. Sometimes you want to put them on the whiteboard, and it's usually more about getting a feel for the player or getting face-to-face with them, learning a little bit more. Maybe you didn't get a chance to meet them at the combine. Those are all reasons that you would sign somebody up for a 30 visit, or maybe you just got, real kind of mixed messaging from their coaches and from people, and you just want to kind of figure that out yourself. So I think it used to be that the 30 visits were kind of viewed as this way to kind of gain insight into who the Cowboys are drafting. I think it can be, and I think they do often bring in guys that they pick in their early with their 30 visits, but it isn't like a key insight the way I think a lot of folks used to think it was.
Yeah, I think I value more what goes on at the combine. I mean, more of kind of who they bring in there, because it's not as publicized, and because they have a little more opportunity to, get a young man's football IQ, and so a lot of people don't want to tip their hand either. I mean, there's you heard Pete Carroll the other day. He shushed John Spytek. I mean, who said talking on the mic, and he shushes him like a 4-year-old kid. Shush. Okay, you don't even tell him. You don't say anything else.
All right. Well, good stuff, and we got more people chiming in via the comments, so we'll get to more of that. And when we come back, I want to throw one of the rumors that was out there today, and also, Coach, I have a couple of coaching questions, and also another little maybe a deceptive move. So we'll get into that as well as we continue our Cowboys Squad Show as we get closer to draft night in the NFL Thursday in Green Bay. This is the Cowboys Squad Show. All right, actually, I'm going to keep you up here, Landon, because I got to get you for this. The Armada Player of the Week, brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we are taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the team forward as we look ahead to next season, maybe pushing ahead the Cowboys. Landon McCool, who do you got?
Yeah, I think today we're going to go with Tyler Booker for the guard for Alabama. We talked about him a little bit in the last segment. Big, strong, powerful player who moves mountains with his strength. Smart, also the kind of right mindset, the kind of a versatile player who can play in a power scheme and a man scheme. He can do the thing in zone if you need him to. But just a guy who is reliable, is durable, is powerful, a lot like the Nissan Armada.
All right. Well, when it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what we think Booker will do and can do in Dallas if he becomes a Cowboy. We shall see. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Thank you, Landon. Okay, welcome back to the Cowboys Squad Show. Jeff Biggs, Landon McCool, and the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. A lot of people jumping in on the message board. Love that. Sebastian says the Cowboys have one chance to draft a special talent freak athlete at edge rusher. Shamar Stewart or Michael Williams they're the second highest paid player for a reason.
Yeah, I like Shamar Stewart. I wouldn't pick him at 12, but that's not knocking him at all.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't have necessarily a problem with him picking him at 12, but I think that there's more likely to be better players there for sure. But right. I mean, the problem obviously there with Stewart is production, right? Just but I think, there's a difference between Stewart and a lot of these other guys that have come out with kind of low production numbers. I mean, I'm a big believer in disruption being production. Maybe you don't have the sack numbers, but he, I think, led the A&M in pressures, if I'm not mistaken. So he is having an effect on the quarterback. I think the issue with Stewart is coming to balance to tackle. I think finishing is an issue with Stewart. If you can feel like you can finish, if you can, get him to kind of come to balance to be a little bit better tackler, maybe you can get a little bit more out of him. But yeah, I don't disagree. I think there's probably going to be better players at 12 than Shamar Stewart.
All right.
I'd like him just a little later in the draft. That's not knocking him at all.
No.
We got to talk about when we're looking at the Cowboys again. I think it's important to think about 3 starters. Yeah, 3 starters in this draft if they're going to go have any chance of competing with Philadelphia and Washington. I mean, if we can't recognize that, then I think we've got really in an uphill climb here.
All right. Before we get back to that, I want to throw something. This was kind of hot this morning, and I know, Landon, you and Marcus get this stuff every day, and Coach, you do as well. But lots of rumors coming out there, and including this one. This was a proposed trade possibility between the Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills for running back James Cook, who has connection with Ken Dorsey, one of the Cowboys' assistants. And Buffalo, as we know, gave a ton of money to Josh Allen, but they have not yet given Cook a new deal. And so there's speculation maybe that would be a possible trade and that the Cowboys might be interested. What do you think of that?
Did they say what the compensation would be?
No.
Well, listen, I mean, I think if you're looking to kind of add talent to the running back room and cheaply. I do think the veteran, market is a way to do that, right? Like you can get a guy that you feel really good about for a 5th round pick that you may not, even in this class that's incredibly deep with running back, you may not feel as good about, at the 5th round pick rookie equivalent, right? So maybe if you want to, like Coach is saying, you feel like you need 3 starters at other positions besides running back, you could potentially trade one of those 5ths for or something like that for Cook, who's, the deal with Cook is that he's on the last year of his contract if the Bills don't want us to re-sign him. So you have to be okay with the idea of signing a Cook to a contract, which I think that's probably what's going to stop this deal up front, right? Like the Cowboys aren't necessarily interested in doing that. But like, let's just shoot out the hypothetical. If they were, that would be a way to kind of secure some more talent in the running back room, probably without having to use a top 100 pick. But at the same time, you're probably not making that trade without securing a contract for Cook, or at least promising him something.
And Coach, before you jump in,
Williams and Sanders are on expiring contracts. They're on 1-year deals too. So you already got a room full of 2 of those guys.
Yeah.
I feel like you could cut Williams and Sanders if you needed to, though. Like, don't you feel like Cooks is like at least 2 steps better than those guys?
Miles Sanders, what do you rush for 1,400 yards? I haven't looked at. I don't like it. I guess I don't like answering that because I haven't looked at enough.
Watch them enough.
I threw that at you guys, so that's
not
my
a fair evaluation for me to say that. I've looked at Williams and Sanders, and I know that number one, they can run the football. They are downhill runners. They run with their shoulders over their toes. They run through contact guys, and they will block your ass. Okay, now that's what I do know. So. If it's, I'm not saying that I wouldn't, you know what I mean? I'm not putting one over the other. I'm simply saying the 2 that you have pretty good options right now.
Well, I was thinking about it too. And I just threw that at you guys. So that's on me. But
I do think that the Cowboys are more than likely going to upgrade the room somehow, some form or fashion. So if you're going to do it and you're looking to kind of preserve draft capital there, that is a way to do it. And maybe even, more immediately improving the room than a draft pick that you could get. However, there's the trade-off there is that you're going to have to pay that running back, and paying running backs is probably not the best idea.
And I'm curious too, something that you both said at the outset that I don't think we should overlook. And that is, with this being a potentially historically deep draft, right, in the middle rounds, I'm curious how many, we haven't really seen any action yet, any kinds of trades, but I'm wondering how many teams are going to be out there that are thinking, man, deep draft, this is a great opportunity to get in, get younger, get rid of salary. And so we could see all kinds of things happen for everybody.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the market after the draft is going to be interesting in the running back room, right? Because like some of these teams are going to draft running backs, and then they're going to, view some of the backs they have in their room as expendable. And when you talk about, a running back by committee situation, you could see, half a dozen guys who could be valuable members of a committee, or could form a part of a committee that are just suddenly available after the draft.
Yeah. And the position you have to have any chance as a quarterback. Now, one of those quarterbacks starts sliding, and that phone is going to start ringing. I can tell you that because if you're in New Orleans, we don't know what the situation is with Carr and his shoulder. It's come out. He might have to have surgery. Yeah. I mean, one of those quarterbacks starts sliding, you're going to get somebody who's going to give you a stupid number to move up. And now all of a sudden, you got yourself in a pretty good position. And so I just think that kind of as aggressive as I am, because I'm a football coach at heart, I mean, you're going to have to kind of let it come to you a little bit at 12, and I think it will. I do think that there's going to be it's going to be. I hope they whatever they cater in over there Thursday night is pretty good food, because it's going to be flying around quick when the phone starts ringing.
Yeah, that leads to another kind of interesting thing too, is that in a lot of these mock drafts, it feels like if teams don't come back up, like that does seem to be, I think Coach is completely right? That seems to be the kind of prevailing strategy that we're seeing now, is that, some of these teams are not willing to reach early in the first round for guys like Sanders and Dart or Ewers, or pick your quarterback, whoever you like, right? But they are willing to come back into the first round to come and get these guys. So what's going to be interesting to see is if the quarterbacks start falling and nobody kind of makes it to the middle of the first, if they start getting taken in the 20 to 25 zone, right? Like teams that are just trying to hop right back into the first round, get that 5th year option with these quarterbacks, right? Which is super important for the development of these guys. I wonder if that doesn't delay the running back run, right? And that's where I think that's what's going to be interesting. Is one of the things I'm going to be tracking on Thursday night is, does the end of the first round feature a quarterback run or a running back run, right? Does the quarterback run happen earlier? Do teams make it all the way back up in the middle of the draft, and that starts pushing the running backs down to a spot where maybe you are in a good spot? Or does that run happen late, and then suddenly you get to a spot where you're at 44 and maybe all the running backs except for Genty and Hampton are still on the board for you?
I mean, I'll say this. I mean, there's a reason that John Schneider's phone's ringing for Sam Howell.
Sam Howell for seconds, I mean?
Yeah.
Sam Howell. Yeah.
Sam Howell is okay, but he's got some NFL starts, and so it's already started. They're tipping their hand to you a little bit by saying if they're calling for Sam Howell, I mean, you don't need to be magna cum laude at Harvard to figure out. And somebody's wanting a quarterback, and it's going to be somebody's. It's going to be plural. And we know that. So just let it kind of come to you is my thought. And I'll go back to saying, I mean, if you have to make the pick at 12, be ready, certainly. But it wouldn't surprise me for one or two of these quarterbacks to slide down, and then to have multiple options. And that's the best position to be in, because now you're playing, one against the other.
Yeah, I would argue that, like, in a vacuum, to me, trading back is maybe the best option the Cowboys have in the first round. Like it depends on who's there, obviously, but I think there's a lot high likelihood that if the Cowboys are getting offers for that 12th pick, that is probably going to be the best option for you on draft night, just because like we've been saying, there's just so many talented players in the middle parts of this, in the early parts of day 3, all of day 2, that you can go in there and get. And if you have so many needs and you're trying to get X amount of starters, 3 starters, right? Plus some talented, rotational folks, you're going to want to go back and get your 4th round pick. You're going to want to get as many picks as you can in that day 2, early day 3 area.
I wish I knew how many times the phone's going to ring where people are going to inquire about Micah. I'd like to know what's the number, how many people are going to say, hey, what's it going to take for us to, talk about, talk. I don't know. There's a lot of different thoughts and opinions out there.
Well, the key will, like you said, Coach, got to be ready and just got to let it come to you. I mean, that's going to be the key for sure. All right, we're going to take our final, literally very quick timeout, and then we come back, some final thoughts. And I have a coach question for you, Coach, when we come back as well. This is the Cowboys Squad Show. Great to be with you on this Monday night as we get closer to Thursday night and the NFL Draft. Right, see, told you that was quick. Welcome back to the Cowboys Squad Show. Jeff Biggs, Landon McCool, and the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. All right, Coach, you kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but I'm curious, just from a coaching standpoint, when you look at the draft and potential players, when you have new coaches to a team, and like specifically the defense, right? You have a new D coordinator, Matt Eberflus. Does that change how the Cowboys look at talent and players and what they may or may not do? I know you mentioned the injuries.
Yeah, I think what it does is it's another different voice from what you prioritize. What does Matt Eberflus, does he see the same value in Leofau, say, that Mike Zimmer did? Does he see the same value in maybe in Wilson, in a safety? Those are all things to me that come into play when you start thinking about this third, fourth, and fifth round. You see, look, Cowboys don't have a fourth pick. They don't right now, a fourth round pick, but my gut feeling is they could. And so now the question becomes, hey, who have they come out and prioritized as far as how they've seen? They've looked at all the cut-ups this year. They've seen guys running around so far. So how do they really value guys? And there's no way for us to know. But when you look at a linebacker, right now, I'm just going to take the linebackers for example. I mean, Kendricks is gone, so Overshown, is coming off an injury, Leofau, and then how do they really value that position? And that's a position that in the NFL, because so many teams are playing with 11 personnel, which is one run. I don't like to talk down to anybody, but which is one running back and one tight end and three wide receivers, which forces you then to substitute into a nickel package where you take one of your linebackers out and bring a nickel back in. So you're really in what is a 4-2-5 alignment and nickel defense. And so they lost Lewis. Do they think that's a big deal, or do they feel like, they can possibly move one of these guys inside? And those are all things that we just don't know. But I think we're going to know after this draft, because you're going to see how they draft and how they value those guys in those situations. If you see them, step up and pick that, that corner early, you're going to say, man, they know something that we don't know. So I just think those are all things that we're not going to know with a new staff. And we talked about it earlier with a new offensive line coach, with, guys valuing certain things. I mean, you knew that Hudson Houck, the longtime offensive line coach of the Cowboys, he always valued that initial shock and punch. I mean, that's why you saw Tyron Smith. I mean, he drilled you right in the chest. Hell, he ruined poor Taco Charlton because, he wasn't ready to make that move. The point I'm making is, how do guys see things and what they value and what they place importance on? We'll go back to the receiver. Does Schottenheimer really value a 6'4" 2 receiver? Because if he does, then that's going to tell you who they're going to pick. If he thinks, boy, I want a guy that can really stretch the field, and if they want to go play, they want to go double up CD. Now I want a guy who can run that deep over and who can get to the middle of the field. We'll see how they value those guys, and they'll tip their hand with how they draft.
Yeah,
I just want to touch on a couple things there, because I think there's some fascinating stuff that it's a very broad topic that, there's lots of angles there. But just to kind of touch on something that he was discussing was, I'm fascinated by how this coaching staff views a guy like Damone Clark, right? Like Damone Clark, drafted not by the last defensive coordinator, but the previous defensive coordinator, right? And I thought that there was time last year when they, it really felt like, well, let's start out with, it felt like the last coaching staff did not like Damone Clark, right? And didn't give him very much opportunity to play. And that's just, how things are. Some coaches have better fits with players and, have their choices. And I think when he got on the field, though, I think Damone Clark played pretty well. But then you didn't get to see him have any more opportunities after that. I wonder if we get a chance with Flus, who is a linebacker guy, has his own kind of opinions, Does he give Clark another kind of chance to be that sort of backup rotational, Mike Will guy, right? That can kind of play off ball. And again, along those lines as well, right? We were talking about nickel, right? And how are they going to play the nickel? How does this defense coordinator view the nickel position, right? They went out and clearly re-signed Izzy McQuamu for a reason. And we've been hearing that maybe potentially that he might get some snaps in there. He has played a little bit of the nickel. Obviously, he was a former corner at South Carolina, played safety mostly his time in the NFL, but has played some nickel and I think to some success. So did the Cowboys look at the tape of him playing nickel for them and decide, hey, let's re-sign him and give him more opportunities there? So it is interesting to see kind of how Flus will kind of color the influences of the Cowboys, preferences for some of the spots. I do think there are some things that are very Will McClay specific that will continue to stay, right? Like long armed corners probably will continue to be a thing. I think that probably fits what Flus wants to do anyways. But I agree that the thing that's made it more difficult this year than previous years is just the amount of turnover in the coaching staff. Not just that it's just the defensive coordinator or just the offensive coordinator. It's both coordinators, right? And then a whole bunch of the assistants as well. There's been as much assistant turnover as I can remember in a while. So
maybe ever.
Maybe ever, right?
I think one guy on offense. I don't have to keep anybody on defense.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know that they kept anyone on defense.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. So the other thing is most people that evaluate a nickel guy know that that's the guy that's got to have probably the best feet. You're going to say, well, what about the corner? Well, the corner's got the boundary. So he can go heavy inside or he can go heavy outside knowing he's got inside help. When you're playing the nickel, there ain't nobody. It's you and him, and that's where it is. And so, yeah, how do they value that? I mean, Mike Zimmer wanted linebackers who were A-gap blitz guys, and they could twist, and they understood how to get lean in the middle, and they knew how to get up the field. I don't know that Matt Eberflus is going to value that as much. He may not run as much of that A-gap stuff. So those are all the things that, again, that we don't know. And, I'm guessing that Mike didn't like Demarcus Clark and didn't like how he got up in the A-gap and got up in there, because that's a big part of what he does and how he creates pressure on a quarterback. And so if he's not in there, I can tell you Zimmer can evaluate players, but, if he didn't like him, we're back to the same thing we said. I mean, it's the beauty's in the eyes of the beholder.
So the bottom line is that there are guys that maybe in the bottom part of this roster that maybe getting new chances, new opportunities with the new coaching staff, right? So Coach is right. Like we're kind of peeking through keyholes, as a friend of mine used to say. We're taking guesses at what we think is happening based on the look. I've always said you can't follow someone's lips; you got to follow their feet, right? Yep. And I think we don't get as many opportunities to watch a team's feet as we do on draft day. Draft day is when we get the most information about how a team really feels about their own roster than maybe any other part of the season. So it's going to be a real good chance for us to all get an opportunity to see, exactly what this team values on offense and defense as they show us their priorities through who they draft.
All right, we got about a minute and a half left. Some final thoughts, Coach, from you, and then Landon, what do you got coming up the rest of the week with Marcus?
Well, I mean, I'll say this, to everybody that always wants to get on Jerry Jones, that wants to jump on him. Remember, he's listening to what people are saying. It's not his pick, and I think that's where so many Cowboy fans kind of think, Jerry's the guy doing the picking. He's listening and taking the input from those people. And I'm going to tell you that it's the one time a year where Will McClay's got to get it done. And he has to get that done this time, whether it's on the pro scouting side and how they've evaluated those guys or his college scouts that are out there. if they line them up right, Jerry will pick them right. I can tell you that. It won't be one of those damn Jerry Jones things. It'll be, hey, they didn't line them up right.
Yeah, I still agree. I think most of the time people complain about Jerry being a megalomaniac and going off on his own. If anything, I think over the years there has been times when Jerry's listened to too many folks, right? And that's been the issue more than anything.
Well, the wrong people. Right,
the wrong people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. Right. As far as Marcus and I, the rest of the week, obviously jam-packed week with everything that's going on with the draft. We are going to have a show Thursday night after the round one to review the Cowboys, whatever the Cowboys happen to do, whether they picked, whether they trade back. We will talk about it Thursday night. We're going to do something similar Friday night. We'll have another show Friday night after day two. And then obviously on Monday, we'll be back to kind of recap the entire thing. I'm also doing a hit. So if you guys watch WFAA on midday, I'll be doing a midday hit a little bit just to kind of review what happened on Thursday night. On Friday morning, WFAA midday hit. So make sure you guys check us out.
Nice. All right. Look forward to that. Well, guys, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. This hour flew by way too fast. Again, you can check out Landon McCool and Marcus Mosier on the daily Cowboys Locked On podcast show. That's every single day. And Coach and I and Marcus will be back with you on Thursday morning and then Thursday night, round one of the NFL draft. Can't wait for that. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week. Check out the Locked On Cowboys podcast show with Landon and Marcus. For the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith, I'm Jeff Biggs. Thank you for watching the Locked On Cowboys Squad Show.